Let's go ahead and get started with the Community Development Committee. We have a action item for the dedication of Johnson Drive right-of-way, and that is Danielle and Sitzman.
I'm playing Danielle tonight.
Hey, Danielle!
Yeah, I know the track was Danielle. So this item pertains to the Mission Trails project that was recently approved by you all and by the Planning Commission. They are now in the process of finalizing the property for sale, so they can buy the property from the owner and move forward on that. And in making that purchase, they realized that one of the requirements that the Planning Commission placed on the final plan was that the right-of-way be dedicated to the city. So this is a simple action to dedicate that right-of-way to the city. And that's essentially the portion that runs along Johnson Drive in front of the Mission Trails project. And it would be about 20 feet or so from what is now the end of Johnson Drive south to basically the front of the building. So that will include the sidewalks and that public parking areas in front of the building. So that's the purpose of this action tonight.
Well,
Seems easy.
seems pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
As much as I'd like to make Brian stand up there for a while.
I'll be up here for a while, so.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Okay, then let's go ahead and take that to council.
I think it can go on the consent.
I believe it could.
Consent, yeah, for sure. All right, then any other questions on that? Then Laura, department update?
I don't know if John has an update on Fox Ridge. In more detail, it was in the city administrator's report, but
Street lights inside, and we're waiting on.
and then that will be finished up. I'll share them this Friday, but we've had a couple of nice compliments from some of the residents in the apartments along there, which is great. And then I did want to let you know that we had word that the traffic signal equipment will ship on November 14th for the Woodson and Johnson Drive. So once it arrives, the conduit and all the bases are in, and so once it's here, Black & McDonald can get that installed. I think that's it.
All right.
Okay, I have one question. How about the recycle barrels for Santa Fe and Mohawk?
We're working on that.
You're working on it?
Yeah.
Because I got a call the other day, wanted to know what we were doing, and I told them I would find out.
Yes.
But we're not going to put them in until we notify them.
Yes, that's correct. We will not put them in until we notify them.
I have a question. Do you want to know what we're talking? Pat's just looking at me like.
You know, I know we're at a crossroads with the mission bowl, but is there any option whatsoever to do something besides that ugly blue tarp that's been sitting there? It looks awful. It's half fallen off. It just looks tacky. Is there any, and since it will be some time before anything happens, do we have any plan to do anything but that ugly blue tarp that's falling off and looks like it's, I mean, it doesn't match with the rest of it. And you're walking to all those back
We
shops
could go
back
with
there,
an
and that's
orange
what you
tarp.
see. It doesn't match.
With an orange tarp
I know
out?
we've had.
Yeah, we could ask them to retarp the building.
I mean, I don't want any undue expense. It just
Yeah.
is, the more the cold comes in and it snows, it's going to be off. I mean, it just looks really, it's not well put together at all. I don't know if it's.
Have you heard any
I
time
know
frame
that
from them?
the owner of the shopping center, the one that actually owns that property that Mission Bowl sits on, has been talking with the owners of Mission Bowl. So there's a discussion going on there about the future of that building, either fixing it or demolishing it or doing something with it.
And I understand it's out of our hand, and just
Yeah.
as an eyesore, if it sits until next spring or summer, it just
I
looks
think he's
bad.
probably in the same boat too. He's got people parking there that are going across the street to the shopping
Like I say,
center.
it's got a big sign for the peanut that you can
Yeah.
park there, so I thought they negotiated that.
Yeah. I think he's probably motivated to do something with the property as well.
What do our ordinances say about a building like that that's abandoned and fire damaged?
You know,
Well, we had hesitated actually because they were in litigation, which I think they still are. I mean, they've made the announcement that they don't plan to reopen the business, but our concern was is there something, and we're starting to explore this just in the last probably 4 to 6 weeks, is there something that can be done that doesn't jeopardize evidence or something that they might need related to that litigation? So I think we'll continue to push that conversation with them and see where that is. So that's why we have sort of held off. So typically we would move on a structure sooner.
What do our
Rather than
ordinances say on something like that?
I don't know, I'll have to look and see.
I still think Les should buy it.
No comment.
Any other items?
Nope.
All right, that
Time to
concludes,
go home.
that concludes the CDC report.
All right. Take a break. No? Okay.
We got new signs. New signs. Laura, we got new signs.
No, no, they're old, they're the same ones.
Well, we will go ahead and call to order our Finance Administration Committee for Wednesday, November 1st. A couple action items. The first one on the list is an update on the Human Service Fund recommendations. So Brian, just an update on that.
Okay, the Human Services Fund is administered by the United Community Services of Johnson County. They award competitive grants to a number of nonprofit agencies in Johnson County that provide safety net programs for those that are near the federal poverty level. Annually, they will solicit grants, proposals from agencies in Johnson County. They review those proposals, then they make recommendations to the member cities that participate in this process. And it's pretty much all of the cities in Johnson County with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. Then the cities are asked to submit a contribution each year towards that grant proposals. So last year the city submitted $7,000. This year it's $7,600. That is in the 2018 budget that's been approved. Grant proposals that they are recommending for funding include CASA, Johnson, Wanda counties, Catholic Charities in Northeast Kansas, Growing Futures Early Education Center, Harvesters, Kansas Children's Service League, Safe Home, Sunflower House, just to name a few. The total that they're recommending be funded is $335,930 for 2018.
How much?
$335,930 for 2018.
That's pretty cool.
That's Johnson in one guy.
Primarily Johnson County, yeah.
That's just Johnson.
Yeah, just Johnson County.
But they didn't list the cities that are not participating.
Correct,
Do you
yeah.
have those?
It's Fairway and
I knew Fairway was, but I wonder who else dropped out.
Mission Hills, Mission Woods,
Mission Hills, yeah.
Westwood Hills.
Yeah, Westwood Hills. Oh, yeah, Westwood Hills. So, I was going to have somebody from United Community Services here tonight to answer any questions you might have, but she's not here.
I think it would be great because every year I question this, and I think several other people have too. I just think it would be great to have a person.
She may show up, later.
Well, we can also ask her to come back. I mean, if we want to talk about your specific questions, we can make sure she's here next week when it's on your agenda for consideration.
Well, don't be just for me, but I mean, as long as I've been on the council, I think they question this every year. Somebody's always got a comment about something. So. No, I don't mind. I mean, where our portion is not very much, $7,600. But I just think it's nice when they ask us for money for somebody to be here.
Yeah. Maybe she was planning on showing up at 7:30.
More of the council.
I I told her this evening, and I think I told her here a little early because we had kind of a light agenda at the previous meeting, but
They don't need your approval until January 5th, so
yeah, we could come back in December.
we can
if
come
you
back in
wanna wait.
December and
Maybe
make sure
December.
she's here if you would like to do that. It's not a problem.
Let's do that. I'd like to hear from her too.
Yeah,
I'll table that.
that's fine.
She may still come tonight, I don't know.
Well, she may miss it.
Yeah.
I guess we can go ahead and move on to the second action item, which is the city employee benefit renewals.
Okay, this is kind of a story of good news and bad news. So I will very briefly go through the good news, start with that. We have a number of benefits that we provide our employees. Health insurance obviously being the primary one, as well as dental insurance, vision insurance. We provide a flexible spending account that our employees can make a contribution, a deduction out of their paycheck that goes into an account that they can then tap into. And that deduction before taxes, that's an important component of that FSA, that they can tap into that deduction to pay for medical expenses or child care expenses. And we also offer life insurance as well as retirement through the CAPERS pension plan and a supplemental retirement plan. All of those plans are on a fiscal year or calendar year. We work with Lockton Benefits Consulting Company to help us with a lot of those in terms of soliciting proposals, evaluating those proposals, and making a recommendation to you all. The medical we've been working on up until about an hour ago. So I'll set that aside for a minute and kind of go through the others. For the dental, we've utilized Delta Dental for a number of years now. I'm not really sure how many years exactly. They did go up a little bit last year. We decided to recommend to you all, and you approved taking the increase. This year, there is no increase proposed for 2018. So that impact to the city will be $43,000. And we share the premiums with the employees at an 80-20% ratio. So the city pays 80% of the Delta premium, and then the employee pays 20%. So the impact that the city would be paying would be a total of $43,000 for 2018. And that is, again, no increase for 2017. Vision, we have in the past used VSP Signature. We switched this past year, 2017, to IMED, a considerable reduction in the premium. They are recommending to us no increase in premiums, and actually guaranteeing the premiums through 2020. So that'll be 3 years of no increase. The city provides that to the employees free, so the city pays the entire cost of that. So that impact for the budget in 2018 would be $9,200. The flexible spending account, as I said earlier, that is money that's deducted out of the employee's paycheck. The only cost the city bears is the administration of that account, that program. And for 2018, that would be $2,650. Basic life, we offer that to the employees at no cost. It's a $25,000 benefit for department directors, $20,000 benefit for employees. The employees can buy up additional insurance if they would like to do that at their cost. The cost for the base plan for the city would be $2,600 for 2018. And they're also offering a rate guarantee for the next 2 years. No increase. We offer a voluntary life insurance plan through AFLAC. That is at no cost to the city. That's entirely volunteer by the employees. There's no impact on the budget. capers, we are seeing a 5% increase in the rates for 2018. That's established by the capers program, so we don't really have any control over that. There's a number of factors that go into how they determine those rates. So that's essentially all of the benefits in a nutshell, with the exception of health insurance. We have been with Aetna Health Insurance for a number of years. Last year, we switched providers and went to Cigna. It was a very nominal increase for us. This year, when we asked for a renewal premiums, they gave us a renewal that was equal to about 49% increase. And there's a lot of factors in that, but the primary factor is just the experience that our group has had over the past year. We've had 3 very significant claims that have made against the plan. So that has had a big impact on the proposed premiums. We had asked for a rate increase, or we had asked for the premiums, excuse me, by September 1st, or October 1st. And they had spent some time kind of working with their underwriters to review their proposed premiums. That took a little bit longer than we anticipated, so we did not actually get the premiums until October 16th. And we met with Lockton to discuss the proposed premiums from Cigna. We thought it best to go out to the market. So we went through that process with Lockton. And they can speak a little bit more to that. We have representatives from Lockton here tonight. They can speak to the process they went through to go out to market, proposal that we got back from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and some of the options with that proposal. Maybe we can talk a little bit about structuring of premiums. So I'm going to hand it over to Tracy Musseloff from Lockton, and she'll kind of go through that process.
Well, I wish I was here on better news. As Brian shared, we had moved from Aetna to Cigna last year in October, effective October 1st, with a 15-month contract to take us through 2017. And we actually had a number of planning meetings throughout the year and had commitment from Cigna to deliver the renewal to us before the end of September. They were all on board with that. Well, the year progresses, and unlike other employers, you have experienced some significant claimants that have occurred since they first wrote the plan. And I feel like the way that they communicated to us, again, they had committed to deliver by September 29th. That did not happen. They ended up asking for a conference call to discuss the renewal that first week in October. And I feel like they were trying to be a partner to the city by holding the renewal so that we could go to market and not release the renewal to the market. Because if they would have delivered the renewal that they wanted to, which would have been much higher than the 49%, that would immediately scare off the other competitors. That being said, we continued to push them, and were able to get them to release by October 16th, which is later than we had negotiated and we had preferred. Technically, based on the size and regulations, they could have held the renewal until 30 days before 1/1, which of course would not be a very good partnership approach. So they did release that to us on October 16th. We met with Brian and Laura to present that information and to talk about the process for marketing. And so it's a little bit unique with, you're considered a mid-market group. You're between that 50 and 99 range. And the carriers will require individual applications from everyone that's eligible for the plan. So that is a cumbersome process for Brian and team to get that information from all of those individuals. The markets also demanded the renewal information to be shared with them. So we did that because, knowing that information, it would be unethical for us to not disclose the stuff that we're aware of. And frankly, they're going to garnish that information from the individual apps anyways. As you'll see from the presentation, you can, okay, oh, awesome, thanks. Is it just that one right there? Okay. We went out to all of the carriers that would be available to bid on your business, and you'll see from the marketing summary that we had received declines to quote based on non-competitive. So technically they're not allowed to, they basically would come to us and say, we're going to decline because we're not competitive with the renewal offered by Cigna. If you want us to release, our pricing will be plus 79% over, or plus, you know, a max rate of plus 300% over the current. And so Blue Cross was one partner that came to the table. They actually were very interested in your business last year, and it was a very close decision between Blue Cross and Cigna last year. So I was actually really pleased that that they did come forth with some viable options for your consideration. They actually released those to us on Monday of this week, so it has been very fast and furious to review those proposals and the variety of different options that that they have to share with you. And so I'm going to jump over this one because we're going to go back to that.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, absolutely.
You indicated that one of the factors that was a determining factor was either number of claims, or is it number of claims or the amount of the claims holistically?
It's really the severity of the claims. So that's a really good question. So and just a little bit of education on what's going on in the market in general, not specific to the city and not really specific to group size, is the impact of large claimants in the market. And so that's due to a number of different reasons. Part of it is ACA with the removal of the annual and the lifetime limits, right? And so we don't have those limits to protect the plans any longer. That's very good for members that have significant health conditions, but it's very hard for a group health plan to sustain that. And then you also have medical and particularly pharmacy innovation that's happening. The specialty pharmacy drugs are skyrocketing. I mean, if you watch the news, I'm sure that you're seeing that all over the place. So we are seeing in our book of business across all of our offices, across all of our clients, a significant increase in large claimants. And so just to give you a point of reference, an individual that would have $1 million of claims for that one individual in 1 year, we have seen a 78% increase in the prevalence of that 2016 over 2013. $2 million claimants, it's up 175%. So these significant, huge claims are definitely happening. For your group, it's more the severity of the claims and the frequency of the claims. Now, I will give Cigna credit that they have shared information with us around those large claimants, because really for groups that are under 100, they don't release the monthly claims information like a large group would receive in terms of what are the claims in comparison to the premiums being paid. So there are 3 significant claimants, and the dollars that are ongoing expectation would be $600,000. And you compare that in comparison to your expected annual premium for 2017 of just barely over $800,000. That's just 3 individuals. That's not including the other members that are covered by the plan. And then you couple that with medical inflation and pharmacy inflation. Medical trend right now, just normal trend, so increases in the price and increases of utilization is trending at about 6%. That's come down a little bit. Pharmacy is trending at about 13%, and that's a blend between typical pharmacy and specialty drugs together.
But Blue Cross, in considering any kind of other adaptations to what we have to offer our employees, that didn't seem to... You have to tell them that up front, don't you?
They have all of the same information that the other markets have, yes. They have given some creative and new emerging options for your consideration. So the plan that is most similar to what you currently offer today is at a between plus 30 and plus 33% increase over current. So that's still a significant increase. And then they have a variety of other options that bring that down to about plus 5%.
Why do you think the trend of the large claimants is increasing? I would have thought with the advent of the wellness programs, that whole preventative care concept, I would have thought. The idea was, in the long term...
Absolutely.
So why is the trend...
Well, and The reality is, I'm a pretty direct person. So in order for a wellness program to really make a meaningful impact, it has to be pretty aggressive, meaning outcomes-based. So it's not just having an employee complete a health risk assessment or have a biometric screening. It's truly like requiring those members to change their behavior, getting their cholesterol readings within a certain range, getting their BMI within a certain range. Very outcomes-based requirements in order to see the health of a population increase, and that takes time. You're up against pharmacy drug cost, and which are all really, the research and innovation is really, really great. It's helping solve things that we've never solved before, but it comes with a really big price tag. So
you're saying globally, the wellness programs haven't reached their maturity yet?
I would agree with that, yes. And they have to be very aggressive in order to see the outcomes that people really are hoping to get.
Why is Blue KC not rated by AM Best?
That's what I was saying.
Well, the Blues plans are independent, so they're each kind of independent little regional Blues plans, and technically they're considered not-for-profit, and so they are not rated by AM Best ratings.
So
And we can give you, I can probably get more information for you on that particular topic, but no, they're not rated by AM Best.
So how do you evaluate the
Their solvency.
financial solvency of
Right.
a
We would be happy to get you more information on that as follow-up. Yep.
But Blue KC is part of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, correct?
It's Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City, yes. Yep. So, as we mentioned, they have a number of different options that they've shared. We have narrowed that down to a couple. Obviously, we can expand that if the council is interested in looking at additional options. They have two different networks that we're going to focus on this evening. The one that is most common and known in the market is their Preferred Care Blue PPO network, which is their most comprehensive network of hospitals and providers. And the other one is called Blue Select Plus. So I'd be curious, are any of you familiar with either of those terms coming into this meeting tonight? From other employers or that you've worked with?
Yeah, well, I wasn't an employer, but my wife's employer, Hy-Vee, had I think it was the Preferred Care Blue.
Preferred Care Blue, right. That is the most common. So about 3 to 4 years ago, and actually it was a genesis from the Public Health Exchange, when Blue Cross was participating with that, they participated with the network called Blue Select. That was a narrow network of hospitals and providers in order to offer a network at a narrow network of providers that agreed to deeper discounts because the network is smaller. The difference between that network that was offered on the public exchange and this Blue Select Plus is Children's Mercy Hospital. So Children's Mercy was not a part of the offering that was on the exchange. And if you've seen the news, they have pulled out. They're not going to be participating in the public exchange going forward. So what we're going to look at tonight is they have given you options based on both of those two different networks of providers and hospitals to choose from. And so we wanted to give you just a snapshot on what that difference looks like, because it is definitely a narrow network. It offers 12% better discounts than the Preferred Care Blue, because if a member selects that option, they are agreeing to limit their choice of the hospitals they're going to. Okay, it's a big difference. It's still a great option, but there's a big difference. They still have a very solid number of PCP and specialist providers to choose from that participate in that network. The biggest difference is going to be the slimmed down hospitals that are, so I'm going to just jump one more forward. So this gives a little bit more information around that Blue Select Plus network. There are 9 hospitals. You'll see the biggest difference is that it does not include St. Luke's and it does not include the HCA hospitals. So this is a really viable option for folks that are already receiving their care in that Kansas City metropolitan area. You do have some folks that are out on the eastern side of town. That would be a consideration for them, because all they really have access to, it's a little bit small, would be the Truman options. And so unless they're willing to drive for their care. Now, the one caveat to that is, if you have a true emergency situation where it's life or limb threatening, they need to go to the nearest hospital, regardless of whether it's in Blue Select Plus or not, and it would be covered as in-network. So for a true emergency situation, they could go to wherever the hospital is that's closest to where they're at that point.
What are the deciding factors of whether it's a true...
Great question. Well, life or limb threatening is kind of what we refer to, right? And so there would have to be a lot of education around the two. If you go down this path, and let's say you offer a choice, you might offer two different plans, one with Preferred Care Blue, one with Blue Select Plus. We would do a lot of education with members around what is the difference between those networks and the plans, what is a life and limb threatening event, and then there's always that prudent, I don't remember what they call it, prudent person where somebody may think it's life or limb threatening and so they go. I mean, that we would have to navigate through that and help for that to be handled at an in-network level. Okay, so the first option that we are going to spend some time looking at is, again, based on Preferred Care Blue, which is that larger network of options. Well, let me also pause here. I'm assuming you don't want to renew with Cigna at the 49%. Plus, they didn't give you any options of higher deductibles to help drive the price down. They said the ongoing significant claimants were too much, that even increasing the deductible was not going to be meaningful, so they gave you what you have and that's it. I'm moving forward in this presentation assuming that we are going to be moving forward with a transition from Cigna to Blue Cross. Or is that a fair assumption to make at this point? So the first option, again, this is a plan that is very close in comparison to what you currently offer today. For Cigna, we're just focusing on the in-network level of benefits. For the Blue Cross option, we're showing both in-network and out-of-network. This is based on Preferred Care Blue, and that is their comprehensive network with a larger choice of hospitals and providers to choose from. Again, the font is a little bit small, but I think you have handouts there. So the in-network deductible level is going to remain consistent at that $1,000, which is very much in the norm for a traditional PPO deductible at this point across the market. The family goes up slightly from the 2,000 level to the 3,000. Co-insurance remains the same at 80%. The out-of-pocket maximum adjusts a little bit by $500 for the individual and $1,000 for the family. The co-pays are fairly competitive. So for a PCP office visit, you would move from $25 to a $30 copay. For a specialist, it actually goes down from $50 to $30. And the urgent care actually moves down from 50 to 30 as well. So there's a little bit, obviously I don't need to read everything that's on the page. This kind of boils to you and shows you what that plan, that's pretty close to what you have today, and the Blue Cross pricing for that option at 30% over current.
Are the Cigna numbers you have up there the increase in?
That is the actual renewal for 2018, yes. Yep. And then the Blue Select Network option, so for a fully insured plan, the carriers will have options that are filed with the state insurance company. Okay, so there's not really any flexibility to tinker with a copay or the deductibles if we want to change things. They have their filed plans and that's what we have to choose from. So for the Blue Select network option, the lowest deductible that they have to choose from is a $2,000 for the individual. Okay, so that's the lowest they would give me. So you'll see, again, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but that drives the price down to a 5% over what you're currently paying today. Obviously, that's still, I mean, that's a great from a price tag, but that's limiting providers and hospitals for your employees.
Right.
So one of the considerations that we've talked with Laura and Brian about is, a number of different things. Do you offer a base and buy-up type of approach? Do you stick, so you give employees a choice between the two, or do you stick with just a single plan option today, depending on what the philosophy is of the council in the city and where you want to go in the future? Yes.
Has any consideration been given to HSAs with high deductible?
We have talked about that a lot over the last several years. They do have qualified high deductible options that we could look at. We have not done that for tonight. That's something we could come back with again for next week. They also have another emerging option. I'm not sure if you've seen on the news. Blue Cross is opening 2 different clinics that are located in Johnson County. They are branding them as SpiraCare, and they are going live January 1st. One of them is already, the building's already built and ready. It's a lease building. The other one is being built right now. That won't be open until sometime in first quarter of 2018. They are targeting, obviously, groups that have a geographic presence in this area, so you would qualify and be a good candidate for that potential. We've shared that option with Laura and Brian. I have one group that is going down that path for January 1, and so I don't want to call them a guinea pig, but they're a little bit of a guinea pig, right? And so I think we would have a number of different options that if we go down the path with Blue Cross with something for 1/1 of 18, we have a number of options that we could build on in future years when we have time to evaluate, educate, roll out to employees. We can certainly still get that done if you wanted to go down a qualified plan for one. I'm a huge fan of qualified plans. I think not as a cost saving option as much as it is a wealth building tool for employees if they understand how to leverage the tax savings of that. So I think that's going to be huge, and particularly depending on what happens with legislation. There's a lot of talk about removing the limits to the contributions and stuff like that. So it just kind of depends on how that evolves. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of those.
How many, the employee base, the full-time employees that are covered by it, do most of them live here in Johnson County, or do they live outside of Johnson County?
We have a combination.
Probably got about maybe 20% that live outside of Johnson County,
Okay.
over in Jackson County, Eastern Jag.
Sure.
And some in Wyandotte County as well.
Some north of the river.
But fairly concentrated in Johnson County.
Are there really any kind of rough estimates, if we were to offer some kind of a choice between people getting the blue KC or choosing the pay up bill,
Yep.
what those costs might be?
Yep. Laura's been crunching a lot of numbers.
For the segue.
Employees pay what percentage of that?
Right now, we've been cost sharing. The city pays 80% of the premium, and the employees pay 20%. You know, several years ago, we used to offer, back in the days of HMOs, we had an HMO option and a PPO option for employees. Over time, we had phased out the HMOs as those kind of moved out of the marketplace, and as the PPOs, we were able to offer the PPO really at a very competitive price for employees. And so, you know, part of what, and you know, we can, and I gave away all my paperwork, thanks. There's a whole lot of ways to slice and dice and approach this. So I want to talk just a minute before we delve into the numbers about just maybe some of the areas or philosophies that we might want to consider as we approach this. So we've had this cost-sharing contribution. When I got here 12 years ago, you were just moving away from paying 100% of all employee benefits, and I think you started at about a 5% contribution and then increased by 1.5% until we reached that 20% threshold. You'll remember when we went through the classification compensation study, they also looked at benefits for us, and we were very competitive in terms of other employers at that 80-20 level. So in terms of our overall benefit package, but particularly that cost sharing at that 80-20 level is very competitive. So moving away from that is something that we want to think about. Do we want to maintain that? You know, what does that look like? I think that
How many employees do we have that are under this,
we have
that are getting the health insurance?
that take health insurance 61 today.
61?
Well, that's 61
That are
employees.
enrolled. That's a compilation of each tier.
Yes, so that's a variety of tiers, but yeah, so we have about 61.
Even that 20% would be a considerable increase in
Yes. So when we
considerable.
so one of the other things that we always look at is what is that cost sharing on that original premium. So is it 80-20? Is it, 70-30? Is it 75-25? So that's one piece to look at. And then when you start to tinker with those numbers, what is that impact for the employee in terms of, and we usually break it down on a per payroll basis because that's how they see it. They think about how many more dollars per paycheck are coming out. So we look at that as a dollar amount, and then you'll see as we walk through some of these, I've calculated that as a percentage. Because as I look at it, sometimes that, what does that percentage increase mean? And then we've also shown you, excuse me, an annual difference because we talk about, what has been given with the implementation of the recommendations from classification compensation, as well as annual merit increases, and how that sort of shakes out. So what we've looked at, and again, the other thing you have to think about is if you offer kind of a base and buy-up option, the best way to sort of control and plan for those costs is going to be establishing your contribution sharing percentage on your base plan and then taking that dollar amount, and that's the amount that you contribute to your buy-up plan. So that the city's rate is consistent and doesn't have as much fluctuation depending on which plan the employee is in and which tier the employee is in. So I'll kind of just run through some of the things that we lined out, and there's a wide range. One option that we didn't show, which we could cost out and would actually result in savings on the city's contribution, would be if we only chose the Blue Select plan, so that the only offering we had for employees was that limited network that would actually result in savings for us. But again, looking at the difference between 55 hospitals and 9 hospitals seems like a pretty dramatic change in options being provided to employees. So we really have approached this primarily looking at moving back to a base plan and a buy-up plan so that employees have some choices and can make some choices based on their own healthcare needs. The other thing that we didn't talk about that we did look at, we aren't required to offer health insurance to our employees. We do that because it obviously makes us a competitive employer. But Lockton worked with us and looked at if we were to eliminate health insurance entirely and send all of our employees out to the exchanges to purchase health insurance, what would that look like? And so we would be paying a penalty based on not offering that coverage. And then typically we would be looking at offering some sort of stipend so the employees could supplement and go purchase that insurance. And we couldn't come up with a solution that had any better cost savings to get a stipend that was meaningful for the employees. So we did investigate that option of completely eliminating our plans and sending employees to the exchange. So option 1, and these are in no order, it's just how I put them on the sheet. So that considers the Blue Select Plus plan as our base plan, where the city would contribute 80-20. You can see there that based on the 2017 current contributions and the proposed 2018 contributions, there's actually a decrease for employees. So people could move to that Blue Select plan and see at the 80-20 level and see an actual decrease in premiums, or a very slight increase. The biggest increase would be a total of $60 over the course of a year. If you then applied that same employer contribution to the Preferred Care Blue network, you can see that it has a very dramatic, employees would be looking at over 100% increase in their premiums if they wanted to buy up to that plan. At the bottom you see kind of net cost, net total, what our budget for medical is. So when we take the total personnel services budget and we subtract out salaries and retirement and all the other things that were included in that memo, what's sort of left over for medical is about $693,000. So that option leaves us with about a $30,000 budgetary shortfall. And that matches up with kind of that 5% increase that was shown on your slide up here. And that's because you're holding that contribution strategy constant across both your plans, even with the base buyout. So I think we all looked at the employee contribution different percentages and went, oh my goodness, that's a challenge. So option 2, we looked at, okay, so is there an opportunity to incentivize more participation in a base plan? So what if we considered a 90-10 cost sharing strategy on that Blue Select plan, and then took those dollars and allowed the employee to buy up to Preferred Care Blue. So you'll see there, again, there's fairly significant savings for the employees who would elect the Blue Select Plus network, and it brings the buy-up percentage differences down to the 56 to almost 70% range. So it's still high, but better than 100+%. There you see the budget. That creates a budget shortfall, estimated budget shortfall of about $116,000. We also looked at the actual, if we just offered one plan, and that plan being the Preferred Care Blue network, that means everybody experiences an increase of between 16 and 25%, but that creates a budget shortfall of about $188,000 to accomplish that.
I have a really silly question.
Yep,
Bear
no.
with me. When you've got in the blue tabs, when you've got like Blue Select, the first one, $2,000 deductible base plan, what is the $2,000 based on? I mean, what's the basis for that deductible?
That's the lowest deductible option Blue Cross offers with the Blue Select Plus network. So that's just a quick snippet to tell you that, just to remind you what that plan design is.
So it matches up with
Yeah.
all the benefits that show up on this other sheet. So we try, generally when we go into a renewal, we try to match the benefits in a new plan as closely as we can with our existing plan. And every year for the last 4 or 5 years, the insurance companies have changed the plans that they have filed. And as Tracy mentioned before, a fully insured group, we have to pick from that menu. We can't we don't get to do a la carte. So this is, when we go to the Blue Select network, this was the lowest individual deductible that we can pick. So this really is just helping us tie this back to the plan that we're considering.
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, okay,
I want to make sure.
I work here, I go to the doctor's office, they say this is the individual is paying, I don't know who's paying $2,000 as a deductible.
That's the individual deductible for that plan option. Now, there's still co-pays that are associated with that
Yeah,
plan.
I'm
But you have-
between deductible and copay, I think.
So if
You
you
have
have an
a flex
inpatient
account,
stay, you would have co-insurance that you would be paying that deductible before the co-insurance begins, and then you would work to your out-of-pocket maximum of the $4,000 if you're enrolled for individual or employee-only coverage.
This is for a period of time.
For a year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
for a calendar year.
Yeah.
The deductible starts January 1st. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Then we looked at an option where we said, what if we did a 90-10 cost sharing on the Blue Select plan and that 80-20 cost sharing on the Preferred Care Blue network. You can see again, you result in some pretty significant savings for those employees who would select the Blue Select network. And you keep that employee contribution difference percentage on the buy-up plan in that 16 to 25% range. That would require us, based on these estimates, and again, these estimates could all change slightly because it's going to depend on which tier and which plan employees enroll in, is about $170,000. And the last one that we showed was really just what do we do if we go to an 80-20 cost sharing across both plans, but offer 2 plans. I think that does have some appeal. I think it allows employees who may be lower consumers of health care an option that's affordable and recognizing some cost savings for them, and I think keeps those who may need to buy up to that preferred care network in line with increases that we've seen in previous years as well. And you'll see that's a budget shortfall of about $144,000. Tracy, would you go back to the slide historically? So, there we go. So, kind of looking at a historical summary of our health and welfare increases over the last several years, you can see we've never had more, in the last 6 years, we've never had more than a 10.9, 11% increase. And so there have been some years where we've had, decreases that were equal to or exceeded increases in other years. So I think we've done a really good job, quite honestly, with locked-in health and looking at managing those costs over the years. But you almost have to throw out the history in the situation that we're faced with the 2018 renewal, because as you saw from the marketing summary, 30% increase is the best we're going to get from anybody in the marketplace, and it only goes up from there. So I think this is important, and one of the things that we talked about, when we got the Cigna renewal initially was, if we don't get anything better than that, it's driven by the severity of claims that we're experiencing. If that gets better over time, we might see some backward movement, but you don't see it at the same rate as the increases. And so, trying to figure out how do we manage that on a go-forward basis is, for an organization, any organization, but particularly I think one of our size. So I'm going to actually stop right there, and I'm interested in kind of thoughts, reactions to some of these different numbers or percentages, because we haven't gone into the budget to say where we could come up with all of these things. We can certainly we will make that happen depending on the option. But if we can narrow that down a little bit more this evening, that would be helpful for us.
That's a lot of numbers and a lot of stuff for us to try and absorb right here at this meeting, but I'm sure you've been mulling over it, as Brian. So do you guys, as staff, do you have a couple of these 5 options that you think would be the best recommendations, or?
I think giving people some choices is probably something we ought to consider. I don't know that putting everybody on the exact same plan is necessarily the best way to go.
I think from my perspective, the one thing I do feel strongly about is offering choice. So I think making the 2 plans available is important.
I think if we're looking at a net increase of 22%, we never want to have to pass those costs along, but things go up 22%, some of that is pretty.
Well, and let me also share, I haven't shared yet, the prevalence of the Blue Select Plus in the market. So most groups offer it only as a slice basis. They're not going in with that being their only option. One large group, North Kansas City School District, did do that for 1/1/17. That's the only network that they give their employees as a choice. They have 4,100 members. It's a $20 million plan because it's just, the cost increases are just not tolerable. And so as much as you want to protect and give the best option that you can to your employees, there's only so much money to go around. And so that's one very large group that went all in. That's the only option that they offer. For groups that are in your size, that 50 to 99 range, about 50% are offering it as a slice option, with a lot more looking at doing that for 2018. So it's not an uncommon offering in the market. It is uncommon for it to be the only network choice.
So based on these assumptions, on each option, you've got assumptions, 30%.
It's conservative. That's a conservative number.
Will these numbers change if those numbers change?
They would only, so my commentary there, I'm very much a proponent of the defined contribution. So the option number 1, like if you look at number 1, you'll see that the city's net cost is the same, $468.58, regardless of which plan somebody elects. That protects the city. Doesn't matter who enrolls in what, you're going to pay the same. So I'm a huge advocate for that. Okay, that's just, I want to make sure that you're clear. Like that protects you because you set your baseline. This is what we're basing our costs on and our subsidy, and it protects you. It doesn't matter who enrolls in what. Okay, the other options do vary depending on enrollment. if you don't stick with that defined contribution. So if you look at, I'm going to then jump to then 4 and 5, right? Because if you look at 4, that third column to the right, the net cost, it differs between the two. You're subsidizing more for that buy-it plan. If you have more people, then if everybody goes to that plan, you're paying more than what's illustrated here. So that is an important consideration. You need to understand that.
And Laura, we have a defined policy that looks at the 80-20 split. If we went to a 90-10, do we have to go back and modify that policy?
I don't think it's actually written in policy. I think we've communicated that each year as we adopt our benefits plan, but it's not, for example, in the personnel manual stated that way. I think we've said we would kind of hold at that 80-20. Again, but we do have some flexibility there. So you would not have to change another policy in order to change your contribution strategy.
So 5 companies gave us quotes. Were there any major companies or carriers that did not choose to bid on our business?
These are all of the carriers that play in this market on a fully insured basis. We did not procure self-funded options with third-party administrators.
What about what's, I know Kristin mentioned some of the higher deductible health savings account plans earlier.
Yep.
Do you have any rough estimates on what potential enrollment we could see if we offered that as another choice? Or outside of this standalone?
Okay, so for a qualified plan, typically when it's offered as a slice basis, you're going to get between 6 and 10% enrollment in that option. And I think what a misconception with people, they think that a qualified plan is going to be a very big cost saver, and you can actually design a qualified plan to be pretty rich. That is the same richness and value of a traditional PPO plan, because you can design them all different ways, and particularly if you end up, a lot of employers will seed and provide a contribution to the health savings account on behalf of the employees, and then that makes that plan even richer. So it just depends on how you design it. We can look at some of those options on the grid that they've provided us pricing for every single option available. So we've just only picked a few to share with you tonight. If you want to look at those options, we can certainly do that.
And in the past, when we've evaluated those, we couldn't get a combination of the benefits, copay, deductibles, structures, and things, and the ability to seed NHSA in a way that saved us any dollars or made the employees feel like it would be a benefit to them. So that's been our challenge in the past, but it's absolutely worth sort of looking at again.
So we knew a year ago that this was going to happen. I mean, that everything's going to go up. I mean, even the person from Block, that everything's going to go up. Didn't they give us that information last year?
Not as much as it went up.
Not 49, 30,
Right.
40.
You missed the first part.
Nobody knew about these claims that would be hitting the plan over the course of the
Right,
year.
I knew
Yeah.
well, people for the large claims, but
Right.
so it just all seems like a communist plot. But it's also something that we have to deal with. So whatever's the best for our employees, because we're always going to have to it's always going to get a little worse until something happens, and that's not happening around Congress. So we have to do.
Those physician fees went down, this might help, right?
I'm not getting any more fees. So, what do you think is the best for our employees?
What do I think is the best?
Yes.
Well, I'm pretty opinionated. I think I've shared my strong feelings. If you offer base buy-up, it's a hard problem to solve because you're trying to protect them from a total rewards perspective. I know that you've made some strides in terms of either right sizing from a compensation study or your merit. And so it's hard when you go and you give a merit increase to people and then you turn around and you're taking away way more than what you gave them in a merit. So there's not an easy solution to that. I do like a choice. I like a base buy-up consideration because you give people an option for a lower cost option and they buy up the difference if they want that comprehensive choice. I realize that the buy-up for that true defined contribution, I mean, if they buy up, that's a significant buy-up for them against what they're paying today. But to protect the city and what you say that you want to subsidize, the defined contribution approach is the most wise.
I don't know if we need to get some more info on those scenarios, or
What's our deadline to make a decision?
Plan year begins January 1, and we really need to have essentially all the deductions prepaid December 1. I mean, as we start cooking out of everyone's paychecks for the January 1 plan year. So,
And I understand we didn't hit our deadline, but that deadline, when you have a massive change, seems not enough lead time.
Well, if they would have,
in this kind of
yeah, I mean, if they
decision,
would
so-
have actually, oh, I'm
If
sorry,
I could
I
finish my
apologize.
question, please.
Okay.
So, I understand that's water under the bridge now, but it seems to me if you don't have a major change, 30 days or whatever is probably enough time to make a change. But when you've got this massive of a change, this is not enough time to try to make this quick of a decision. But that just being said, I think we need to change the process to allow us a little bit more time in the future.
Well, and yes, I think the challenge for us will always be, we will never get a renewal from a carrier sooner than October 1st. Because for a group our size, they will not release a firm quote longer than 90 days out from the beginning of the plan. So we are always up against October 1st is usually, which is why we were pushing Cigna to say, can we please have it, just even a week ahead of that October 1st deadline would be really, really good for us, because with previous providers, it would drag out and we would get it this mid-October timeframe. And you're right, when it's a decrease or when it's a 1 to 5% increase, it's usually we usually build that into the budget.
yeah.
Or when we've had, even when we've had a higher increase, we've had a carrier that put that full menu of plan design options on the table, which Cigna also did not offer at this point. So it's either, this plan or no plan with Cigna. So it's, 49% increase or nothing. So yes, we are, then when you have to go out and for a group our size go through that full underwriting process, and we got that done in a week's time.
I understand they can't give you a quote any earlier, but they obviously have information. So do they not give you a signal that this is what it's going to look like, we think? Usually you can get some kind of a signal from an insurance company that will say, everything looks great, we're not looking at a major disruption, we don't think, or things have gone to hell, we have
We
three
had
major
been meeting
plans.
with them very proactively and had that commitment to get the early renewal. They did not give us that indication at the mid-year point.
No.
They did not.
Because those claims didn't all happen in the last 30 days. So they've happened throughout the year, which usually is, if it's a driving force for the renewal, they can give you an indication that, yes, you had some major claims and there's an increase, major increase coming.
Some of the claims were more recent
Okay.
in terms of them even waiting. Part of it, they were even waiting to hold until one of the individuals was having an MRI, and they were waiting for the results of that MRI for them to have conversations with underwriting and clinical and so forth. So I agree with all of your points. I wish that I had the power to change the process and the market for this size of a group.
Do we have any pros and cons or examples of other cities that have used any of these where we've had some feedback one way or another, like this was really good, this was a good choice, or this was not a good choice?
For the Select Plus network? Not local city clients of mine. We can certainly go to Blue Cross and ask them for like a listing of groups that would be references on your behalf for this option. I mean, KU Med is one of our large clients that offers Blue Select Plus as an option, I believe. And so, I mean, it is a very common, of the local city groups that we have in our book, they are not with Blue Cross with this option. Johnson County Park and Recreation District is the one client that I mentioned that is going down this path for 1-1. They're actually doing the clinic, that Spire Care option, that's wrapped with the Blue Select Plus network. So that will be a new offering for 1-1 and 18. Johnson County government continues to evaluate the narrow network. They're going to hold out a little bit and see how JCPRD, what their experience is like in 2018. City of Independence is with Cigna on a self-funded plan. City of Lenexa is self-funded with the TPA, so they're not with Blue Cross. So I can't give you that example for a city, a local city that's in our book, but I'm sure we could get references from Blue Cross for you.
So Laura, based on what we've discussed so far, what are you leaning toward in terms of representing to employees?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a trade-off because, you know, what the employees will always tell you is they don't really want to ever pay any more for their health insurance.
Right. Nobody here wants to
Yeah,
charge them.
absolutely.
And they want
Unfortunately, I have everyone's control.
But the question is, whatever we have to come up with to keep an increase in health insurance premiums within some sort of tolerable level means we're giving up something else in the budget. And what is that? It's going to typically going to be, you know, capital items, merit pool. So it could be other things that are going to impact the daily operations, their jobs, you know, their salaries. I mean, there are just not that many places where we can go to find, you know, that sort of money in the budget. So again, I think it's part of looking at, the other thing that we didn't do is we didn't look at, you know, we could have had smaller increases in premiums by changing the plan design and increasing deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums and co-pays and those kinds of things. But those are the same dollars out of those employees' pockets as when they pay their health insurance premium. So we went into this saying, you know, let's try to keep that out of what they pay out of pocket when you go see your doctor, when you go to the emergency room, as close to what we have currently. And then how can we try to counterbalance or counteract or, you know, not look at 100% increase in what you're paying in health insurance premium.
Yeah, I've got a question. When they're looking back, are they looking just at the previous year's claims, or are they looking at an average of 3 years, or?
They're really looking at the most recent 12 months, and they're really looking at those 3 large claimants and what they're expecting for the ongoing.
Okay, so.
The 600,000 is an expected ongoing, go forward number.
So with that kind of an increase, if the claims were the same next year as they were this year, it would just be the same cost. You're already paying for that extra. If they went down, then our claim cost went up 49% this year. Well, not these claims, but the increase went up whatever, 30%. It might come down 10%.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
And that's on a group. So I have a university client that's a little bit larger than you. They're about 300 enrolled, and they have been in your position where they actually very much considered terminating their plan and sending their people elsewhere for coverage. They had gotten somewhere close to the 47% increase. They did not dump their plan. They did make changes in terms of they have 2 very high qualified high deductible plan offerings that they offer. They ended up getting like a 15% decrease after that one big year. And then this year for this next 3-1, it's flat. So to Laura's point, we're trying to close the gap. It just doesn't happen as fast because you're still up against the medical and the pharmacy inflation. So it's...
That happens with your auto insurance too. I mean, I've heard.
So it appears that one of the first decision points is whether 80-20 philosophically is still, because if you make that decision, that narrows the 5 options to the less options. So I guess philosophically, do we see 80-20 as the right mix because there's a 90-10 in here also, so I guess trying to dissect this a little bit and make a smaller chunk to try to buy.
Well, again, so part of that question is, as Tracy has said, you know, she's a strong proponent, and that defined benefit, applying that to your, you know, to your buy-up plan, gives us a much clearer picture of what those cost impacts are going to be when we go through enrollment. So part of that is, you know, what's your tolerance, you know, a little bit, if these numbers don't match up exactly. I mean, I think we've had pretty consistent enrollment in the various tiers, and I think we're probably conservative on who would take the base plan in this case. But, so that's really kind of more of that, why we would suggest that 90-10 option, trying to get to a more reasonable percentage on the buy-up. Because if you stay at that 80-20 and then use that defined contribution approach, you're looking at those 100 to 118% increases in premiums for employees.
I'm probably more inclined to do that defined contribution approach as well.
So from a timing, decision-making perspective, yes, we're always, we live our open enrollment life up against the wall for our size group. But, and as Brian mentioned, you know, so part of the challenge from once we make a decision, we bring the new carrier on board, we get all the documents signed, we fill out all the applications. We schedule open enrollment for everything else, and then we start deducting. So we prepay our premiums, but the other challenge there is the closer we get to the first of the year, we want the carrier to have time to get the employees into the system so that come 1/1 of 2018, when somebody goes to the doctor or the hospital or the emergency room, they've got coverage as well. So that's, we try to build in a little bit of time frame around that so that serve all of those masters, if you will.
Laura, remind me, under Sitzman, do they have a defined list of doctors?
Well, there were in and out of network benefits, so you could see any doctor. It would just, the level of benefits would depend on whether that was an in-network provider. And so that would be similar here with the preferred care blue plan.
So we have to make a decision tonight, don't we?
Yeah, I think you've got a little bit of time. We can do a work session. You've got our council meeting. Unfortunately, where we typically have 2 weeks between our committee meeting and our council meeting, we're also shortened up this month.
Exactly.
So we do have the council meeting scheduled for next Wednesday. We can certainly do a work session in advance of that, and then, I mean, if we need to call a special meeting, this is a significant issue. It's a significant budgetary item. We can absolutely do that. It would be our preference if we can make that decision prior to Thanksgiving. That would be the best, because that gives us the most time to adjust and handle the enrollments and get the right premiums deducted from the employees.
Can you discuss this more within the staff or on the heads or?
We haven't, because we got the numbers. I mean, we had our first conference call with Lockton at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And so we haven't, we have a staff meeting tomorrow, and so it will be at the top of our agenda then, but no, and we haven't had that.
Because I'd like to hear from some of this happen, how they feel. I mean, I don't want the premiums to go so high that the guys don't make any money, that we're taking away their merit raises or whatever we're giving them.
Right, but this, the cost of the insurance is going to go up to the city at 26% and 22%. I don't think it's unreasonable to have to pass those costs on.
Also, I'd like to know under the given options, where we're coming up with the money.
Yeah.
To where the shortfall is.
Yeah.
What categories are we looking at to possibly take from? And
Yep.
So how long would that take for you guys to get that together? And that would probably determine maybe our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Next Wednesday.
yeah, I think we can get you probably even, you know, Friday, Monday, some options with not only, you know, recommendations and contribution strategies, but also where we can find the dollars.
Because there's a far stretch between 30 and 188,000.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, about 158,000. Yeah.
You know, and there's not, I mean, we kind of have looked at, there's not a lot of other things on the benefit menu, if you will, that could be, you know, the retirement contributions to CABRs and KPNF are mandatory. We don't have a choice about those. The dental insurance, you know, I played with a little bit there in terms of contribution strategies, but it's just not enough dollars to make.
And you're making this selection in the next 6 weeks at the latest. Do we have any gaps right now? I mean, do we have employees that we're looking at hiring? I mean, because that's going to make a difference too in terms of, even if it's 2 or 3, for this staff, it makes a difference.
In terms of...
Are we hiring anybody before the first of the year that you're aware
Not
of?
at the first of the year, no. There's a vacancy or two in the police department right now.
That, well, we may hire a court clerk. We have a court clerk that's...
So maybe 3 positions possibly?
We have a position held open and one open, so count 2.
But I don't think you've got a lot. I mean, I think we've got about the same rate that we typically have open at any given time. So in terms of float and where we are from the budget perspective.
And we can find either line items that are money in the budget to do other things. So I would think this is really important, that we find the money if we're going to do it right. I think our employees, I think they deserve that. So we can find money for other things, so I think we can show our employees.
And your challenge here is it's not a one-time expense, it's an ongoing expense. So we have to, you know, just like we did with classification compensation, we have to make sure we're looking at, can we sustain that? Not just can we do it one time, but can we sustain that going forward?
I think that's a good point to bring up too. That's part of the reason why I favor the idea of giving some choice, because it's going to be an ongoing thing we're going to face every year. Try to put everyone under one plan. Who knows what's going to happen a couple of years down the road that could cause additional big increases. I think coming up with something that gives people a choice is a better option for us, for everybody to do.
So should we meet an hour before the city council meeting next week to get this done? Or is that too soon?
Can we do it in an hour?
I would say you're probably, I would think you would be able to get through most of what you needed to. I mean, I don't know that you'll be ready, I don't know that you'll be ready to make your decision on next Wednesday night, but I think you can probably get through what we're going to have to present in an hour's time.
If you go to a work session the next week, when Nick and I are in Charlotte, we can call in if we need to.
Or, well, you'll be here for so if we do the work session next week, you'll be here, and then you could call in for this, if we had a special meeting, depending on when that was. Yeah, the problem is then you get your Thanksgiving holiday thrown in there as well, and so you kind of back up everybody else the holiday schedule. So certainly not an ideal situation.
It's really tight for open enrollment.
Exactly.
You know, educating the employees and giving them opportunity to make a decision.
Well, and finding
Fill out
doctors and
paperwork.
stuff. I mean, it's, you know.
And, you know, talk to the spouse and all that good stuff.
Well, and I think, Tracy, you shared with us, you have some tools available that can help the employees evaluate which plan may be best for them from a cost standpoint based on their utilization and those kind of things. So that's certainly something that can help as we go through that open enrollment process. And again, part of why I think our challenge in shying away from an HSA is that's a lot of employee education, you know, and throwing all of that. And so I think having that option, I think we've moved to a place in the market where that it becomes easier for us to talk about that. But our concern again is then just the time that it takes to really educate about it.
Well, maybe that's something to consider for next year.
I mean, Billy and I get an HSA for years. We think it's fantastic. I mean, because we're saving money and it's growing and growing. I mean, if you're a young person, it's a fantastic option. But yeah, it's not something that you want to get on when you're 55 maybe. And we get, you know, his employer pays, you know, contributes quite a bit through it, and it's all tax free. I mean, there's tons of great things about it. Yeah, it takes a lot to educate people for sure.
So will you be rolling this out to everybody prior to our meeting, or will we all come to some conclusion to go down to like 2 options or something, and then you'll have an all-employee meeting? How will that work?
You'll have to make your decision. I mean, we can give you some feedback. Like I said, we have not even had a chance to sit down as, you know, leadership staff to talk about it. We can, you know, start to give you that feedback, but I don't like to take it to the employees until you've made your decision. Yeah. And said we're entering into a contract with XYZ provider for these plans, and then we can, you know, roll that out.
So are we meeting then next Wednesday?
We have a meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah,
Right.
It was
Sounds
a
good.
work
So do
session.
you want a work session at 6
Work
o'clock?
session 6.
I
I
think
think
that's
6
good.
is enough.
I think it is. I mean, honestly, you'll be ready to take a break from it after an hour.
So if any of us want to come in and talk to you separately, we could do that before the meeting too. That's
Yep.
like we do.
Yep. Or if you have questions, you know, the specific information or scenarios that you'd like for us to run, let us know. We can absolutely do that. I mean, that's the challenge. There's so many choices. It's hard to know how to, you know, where to jump in.
If that's open, I guess, for 6 o'clock next Wednesday. Move on to the rest of this. We just have one item left. It's a discussion item on parking safety.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. I was asked to give a brief presentation about parking lot security. So what I put together here is just a brief, there's 2 sides of this. There's the crime prevention, which is always what we're shooting for. Then there's things that we can use, electronics and other methods that we can use to detect crime and ultimately catch people who are responsible for it. So when you talk about a parking facility, it presents unique challenges because it's a low-use facility. So when you think of a business like Quick Trip or something like that, it's constantly moving, which automatically reduces crime somewhat because people are just too afraid they're going to get seen, you know, and get caught. So low-level usage facilities present a challenge. So we use crime prevention through environmental design, through the design phase that helps deter crime in that. And the first item of that is natural surveillance. So what we want to do is make sure that criminals feel like if they go in there to do something, they're going to get seen. So we want to keep things as wide open as we can to be able to see through from front to back. Just everything we can do to give them the appearance they're going to be seen. A lot of that's done with lighting in the design phase. And these apply to every structure, whether it be residential, commercial, parking garage, whatnot. So we want to make sure that the lighting in the structure it either meets or exceeds the current standards set forth by the Illuminating Engineering Society.
Hey, I just want to throw in here that I kind of asked the chief about this and Laura about this deal because with the new parking garages that we're going to have going in, if they go in at Gateway and up here at Eagle City, it's just to me, an area of potential problem.
Mischief.
Mischief is a good word for it. And so I just was talking to the chief about it. He said you need to talk to Dan, because Dan looks into this stuff. But yeah, I think we need to consider this, as a city, just to keep the residents safe. I know we have a parking garage over here at Script Pro, and but that's there. It's a private company, and they take care of that and maintain it. As far as surveillance and stuff themselves, that's fine. But when we're talking about parking for the general public, that's a different deal. Just think we need to be proactive on this and take a look at some ways to keep our residents and visitors safe when they're here. So I'm sorry, I just want to.
Oh, that's fine. So the other factor in that is making sure landscaping doesn't become overgrown or grow tall and bloom out to block that view, because that becomes a safe haven for a criminal. Next, you go to natural access control. It's the usage of walkways and signage to guide people exactly where they need to be. What that does is it eliminates, if you sign things appropriately and guide people through sidewalks and pathways, it eliminates the excuses of why somebody's in a place that maybe isn't one of those. So, if there's a big huge sign that says restrooms, and I go find a guy in the corner and he's like, well, I'm just trying to find a bathroom. Well, there's a 20-foot sign that says bathroom. So it's to aid in that. It makes it easier for the public to identify suspicious activity that way as well. So we want to make sure that the landscaping, sidewalks, and signage are appropriately placed to move those people exactly where they're supposed to be. Territorial reinforcement uses different pavement and fencing and other landscaping. What you want to do with that is you want to make sure you clearly define, you want people to know exactly when they move from public space to private space. So that can aid in that. So signage, they all kind of overlap, signage and pavement treatments to let them know when they've gone from public space to private space. And then, of course, a very important aspect is maintenance, which we need to make sure that those facilities are kept up to standards through the inspection process, but also through the neighborhood services program to make sure that they're following through with the plans that were approved. Then you come into the other items. Well, I should say too, from what I can tell by my non-architect mind, it would appear that the developer and the architects have used those items of crime prevention through environmental design when they made this design. It seems to be a fairly open parking structure. The stairwells are at least windowed, so it provides a direct sight into the stairwells, and maybe potentially even an elevator shaft, but I can't read that small. So there's the electronic items that can be used are somewhat preventative, but also provide something to go back and look at in case something does happen. So we talk about security cameras, a good combination of general area surveillance cameras. So what I mean by that is, in general, if I go do a survey to a business, if somebody's not going to be watching those cameras, I'm not a big fan of a 180-degree field of view camera. If somebody breaks into a car and they shatter the windshield or the door glass, I don't need a video showing me that glass was broken. I can see it there on the ground. What I need is I need a view of somebody that can identify this person. So a lot of the general area surveillance cameras are generally used for liability purposes, but we also want to mix in directly focused cameras to start to be able to identify a person in a video. Now that changes it all. A lot of things change when you have somebody that's sitting there viewing the cameras 24 hours a day, because those general area surveillance cameras are effective at that point. So they can aid in the prevention of crime. but their biggest usage is to go after the criminals once something occurs. And then you have the question, you know, who the cameras belong to, again, who's monitoring them. Will their system provide for remote access, which most systems generally do nowadays? Another question is, you know, would they be willing to provide access to the police department? And of course also a maintenance plan, and because just like every other thing, if you don't maintain it, you don't replace it every few years, things start to break. And generally what I've found a lot is that's something that is never accounted for until something bad happens. Emergency call boxes, they definitely give the public, they may give the public a greater sense of safety, which is an important part of crime prevention. We want to make sure not only do people feel safe, but it actually is safe. So call boxes can be a good preventative measure, and also to make people feel safe. The problem, the downside of call boxes is usually you find them on adjacent ends of a facility, making it difficult for someone in need of assistance to get to it in certain situations. And again, where will they be placed? The other factor is that generally those direct dial 911, which may require some sort of approval from the sheriff's office since they provide dispatch service. I'm just not sure how that works. We haven't dealt with that. And then, you know, how will they be identified to give us a good location? You know, if there's a 3 or 4 level parking structure.
How do you know if they're on level 2
Yeah,
or
we need
level
to
4?
be able to identify where those are at. And I would imagine that through technology, that's not that much of a problem nowadays. But the other thing is, how do we address the pranksters? They're just going to go through on their skateboard and press every button to see. So, another option that can be used for detection of criminal activity is license plate recognition systems. They use technology, fast action camera to record license plates that are automatically checked through the NCIC and the local database for stolen vehicles, any warrants associated to vehicles. And we can also manually, you can also manually enter vehicle tags to give you an alert if they were to go in that facility. The downside of that is, not a downside, but a cost measure. That has to be owned by the police department because of criminal justice information. Information can't be shared with private individuals. But there's, you know, potential for a grant or some sort of agreement potentially. That system could be incorporated into the Gateway project as well, and it would also give us the ability to expand license plate readers, or one or multiple on our patrol vehicles. It would give us a better idea who's going around the city. You can, so say if we had a system like that and we knew that 4 cars were broken into between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., I can go to that system and say, show me every picture of a license plate that went through during those time frames. So a good combination of the electronic measures as well as the crime prevention through environmental design measures are going to give us the best chance of making sure we don't have any bad experiences, or hopefully at least reduce the number of bad experiences that occur in a parking structure.
So, yeah, so my thought on this was that we ought to come up with some kind of a plan, a city ordinance that any public parking garages built in the city had to, at the developer's expense, have some sort of surveillance, you know, cameras or the call boxes. I like that idea too, but something installed, and then hopefully use the guidance from our own police department to tell us, you know, what would be the best. So we want them to meet a certain specification for cameras or whatever it is we want to put in there. Make sure it was in there. If they want to use something better than that, that'd be fine, but we want to set up some kind of guidelines. Again, this is just out of my part, coming up with this, but I'm thinking about safety, you know, again, trying to be proactive on it. Just curious what you guys think. And
I have a question. I thought at the Gateway project that they were going to be responsible for patrolling the garage.
Cleaning up
I
and
thought there was a-
maintenance.
There's a clause in the
There's something
contract.
about that, yeah.
Okay, so they will be providing some of that protection to their personnel?
Hopefully,
And then Laura said something earlier about that.
I will follow, I know that when there was a Walmart that was proposed.
oh, that's right, that's one that.
There was a specific commitment to 24-hour security and patrols. I
Yeah,
don't know,
security guys,
I suspect that, and the cleanup, and I suspect that was tied to the tenant. But I will reach out to both of those developers and talk, because we were talking, the chief and Dan and I were talking earlier about, again, do they have somebody, what's their business model, what's their plan? I don't think we saw security, I don't know that we specifically asked the question about security personnel when we visited the other EPC projects, for example. I don't remember that being, noted as something that they provided as a service to their residents. I think they talked about maintenance people on site, but we can kind of get, I think we need to start with what do they have planned now, and then how does that fit into kind of your vision, or the things that you might be interested in seeing to beef that up. So we will ask those questions.
Yeah, and really, I'm not that interested in what they have planned now. If we had our own ideas, as long as they did at least that, at least what we
Right.
came up with, or either.
I thought one of those EPC developments had a little room off to the side when you first walked in with cameras.
They may have. I know that they do install cameras in their parking garages. How many and the exact locations or how they determine those, I don't know. I know we've talked with them about the fact that they do install them.
So yeah, is that anything you guys would want to pursue, or?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, absolutely. There was people have gotten raped down at the plaza and those creepy garages.
Really?
Well, are call boxes becoming obsolete?
They are creepy.
Well, I think with everyone having a cell phone, they're becoming more obsolete. But there are those occasions where if an attacker is approaching, you have little time to hit 911 as opposed to hitting the button. It may have some value, but I don't have any usage statistics about the nature of calls that come in through those. I did check with Lenexa. Their parking structure out at their new city center has call boxes. They would go directly to their dispatch center, but they haven't had any issues with them as of yet.
That's good.
Yeah, I think Kansas City, Missouri, didn't they just start up the project where they've got either residents can sign up with the police department to have the police department tap into their surveillance, private residents, or did that include businesses as well?
Several cities have developed databases. It doesn't allow access, but it gives you a place to go to if, say if a burglary occurs on your street, and I know your next door neighbor has a camera from this database, I can go ask them if I can look at their video. But it doesn't give the police department direct access.
Okay, yeah, okay. But we don't need to write anything special for that to happen, is that?
Generally, I was telling Laura earlier, I don't know what the shift is now, but we're running across more businesses that aren't providing us their video.
They are not?
They're not.
Really?
So when they're calling you to investigate a crime, and then you ask them for video, and they're telling you you need to subpoena us.
Right.
Really?
Yes.
For a crime against them?
Yeah, that they're calling to ask for assistance on. I know it was an interesting conversation earlier.
So that's why I'm kind of curious about the access, whether they'd be willing to share access with the police department.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, wherever it was, about having cameras where the police could pull up and tap into them automatically, you could see.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
That's just, just a remote access over the internet. So theoretically, officers in the cars could pull up, if they get a call there, or if we know we're having issues there, somebody could be monitoring them remotely from the car. You know, even if they're, you know, patrolling, you know, down by the gateway, they would still have
Look in there
and know what
go
they're
from
going
camera
into.
to camera and see what's going on or whatever. That would be cool. And what kind of system would that require?
It's generally, most systems
standard
nowadays, if they have
Really?
a network video recorder, it's just as simple as them giving us credentialing.
Most surveillance systems are now cloud-based, all internet.
It's really whether or not they're willing to give us access. I would think if there's going to be some shared public parking, it's probably something we want to strive towards.
All right. I think that'd be cool.
I was just taking a quick look. It looks like there is some grant money out there too that we might be able to look into. So.
Yeah, you know, I think in the past we've looked at some of those license plate recognition systems and towards the idea that some of the back-end costs were heavy at that time, but I think they've come down some with cloud-based information as well.
Yeah, I think we should put a lot of that cost for that stuff on the developers too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, Dan.
Do we have any other updates?
The only thing, Dan, well, since you're here, you're not always here, would you mind giving them a quick update on your emergency management training?
Oh. So on October 13th, we had our classroom portion of our Red Cross shelter training. So they came in and taught us the book stuff about how to go about setting up the community center's emergency shelter. This past Saturday, we had, in that class, we had a great turnout. I think we had over 40 people attend that class from not only a lot of Christie's staff, police department and other city staff, as well as people from the community. This Saturday, we had the second part of that, which was the exercise part of that simulation. We got to learn how to set up these ridiculous cots. It took a while to do. But it was well attended as well. We had, I think, probably about 8 members of the community that were present, as well as most of Christie's staff again. And it really went well. I think it opened a lot of people's eyes as to the nature of what we could be facing should it ever come to the time that we need to open that up as the shelter. I know Kristin and Natalie, I was amazed by all the things that they've put together so far already, and we're going to continue to build off this. There's a lot of people. John was there. I forgot John was there. There's a lot of people in this community that are willing to step up and help us out if the need arises, because we're going to probably be pretty busy ourselves managing whatever it is that caused us to open up the shelter.
And you'll have a link on the community center webpage or the city webpage that talks
about the sheltering process. Well, we learned quite a bit. There was talk. It's usually kind of a hierarchical process where if we want to open a shelter, we would contact Johnson County Emergency Management and say, hey, we need a shelter. They would contact the Red Cross. We've learned that we have some flexibility with that. So we're not, I think that's something that we would put up in the time of the crisis and advertise that through whatever media is available. But I don't think we want to blanket. I had a meeting with Wellstone about opening up as a shelter when they were out of power for a significant time. I encouraged them to find sister property in the area that they could kind of partner with and move each other to another facility that may have electricity. But I think every situation is going to be a little bit different. And I don't know that we are ready to blanket statement anything yet.
So in this area, probably the main type of event, or you would even need that, would be either a tornadic activity or an unexpected volcanic eruption. So, is there any other things that they talk about in this thing?
Ice storm.
Yeah,
Ice storm.
Ice storm has become my biggest fear after I've taken over the emergency management. Because when you have an ice storm, it impacts everyone.
Yeah.
You have a tornado, it goes through a quarter-mile path through your city, and, Overland Park and Lenexa and Shawnee can still come help you. But when you talk about an ice storm event, everybody's survival of the fittest at that point.
Go mission.
All in the same boat.
Large purple fire.
Yeah, another large event like the Falls of Fire, if it were to have expanded, there's 435 apartments there, all of a sudden we're going to need a lot of space.
People do.
So we're going to, like I said, we're going to continue with the momentum that we started, keep building our arsenal of tools that we can use to make sure that we're ready if we need to be.
Very good.
All right, does anyone have anything else?
There is game 7 on TV.
It's 5-0 Houston.
5-0 Houston.
What?
Top two.
Good, I'm used to saying.
I think with that, we'll call this adjourned. Thank you.